with some reports now suggesting that Tottenham would in fact be able to register a keeper straight away if one was brought in on a free transfer. Johan Langer is also set to work on eyeing up young English goalkeeping starlets to potentially join us in January. Meanwhile, our newest South Korean star is on his way to the club in less than a month, and Hugo Lloris has contextualized his thoughts on the now infamous Daniel Levy Champions League finalist watches. All this and more on today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Press subscribe for daily Tottenham Hotspur content. And as we get closer to the transfer window opening in just over a month's time, I'll be bringing you daily Premier League and European transfer news as well, always starting, of course, with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. And if you're watching this live on Big Up or you'd like to get involved in my daily Tottenham Hotspur news videos, please do sign up to Big Up. It says in the top corner, bigup.com, the Spurred On podcast. Come and sign up to the community and get involved in these daily shows. I see that Jo is already online. Thank you for joining me. Anyway, let's get on with this news day. And Alistair Gold and Rob Guest on their podcast have said that actually, despite all the reports so far suggesting that Tottenham could not register another goalkeeper if they bought one in on a free transfer, in fact, they potentially could do. And that is due to us only having 23 out of 25 potential players registered in the Premier League squad. So a lot of people, after the news, of course, that Vicario has fractured his ankle and will be out for potentially as long as 3 months, many people have been looking at the goalkeeping free transfer list and potentially thinking, are there some keepers there we might like? For instance, Keylor Navas as one, but that would cost a lot of money, wouldn't it? And I think, look, I'd be intrigued to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Do you think we should go for a short-term fix, try and get someone in now on a free who we'd have to probably pay a lot of money until the end of the season at the very least? Or wait till January and bring forward what were the initial plans, which I believe were in the summer, to boost and bolster our reserve goalkeeping position? For me, just to give my thoughts, it is an ugly look that we've been left with only Vicario as a goalkeeper who we know is good enough to play in the Premier League. Fraser Forster's had a stellar career. He's had a really good 10, 15 years at the top. However, is he someone we can trust for the rest of the season potentially as our backup keeper? My answer to that would be no. And you never know with injuries like fractured ankles. You never know whether Vicario will be fit in 3 months, whether he'll be fit a bit quicker, or if indeed he could have a breakdown and it go longer. So I think we do have to move personally in January to bring in a better reserve. And that is just something that I think we have to do what we did with Pedro Porro, which is we had budget to spend in the following summer, but we brought some of that budget forward. And I think we're going to have to do that in January as well. My only worry is that then going to affect potentially players that we were looking to bring in January as is? I really hope not. But I think, listen, we keep getting told how high the revenue is at Tottenham Hotspur, how much potential money there is to spend, how profit and sustainability rules aren't affecting this club compared to other clubs. We need to put our money where our mouth is now and bring someone in January. Jo says in the comments, how many slots do we have available in our squad for homegrown and non-homegrown? Well, I believe, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, Jay, but thank you so much for writing in. I believe that we can have pretty much as many homegrown, well, certainly 2 more homegrown players, that's for sure, in the Premier League. But isn't the kind of non-homegrown element more about, I think it's more about the UEFA competition. So that's more about the Europa League, and that's where we're stuffed, isn't it? Because that's why Jed Spence wasn't allowed in that Europa League squad. However, I think if we get through to the next round of the Europa League, then we are able to shuffle the pack a little bit, and we would be allowed to move that squad around a little bit. Talking about potential signings of goalkeepers in January, Spurs apparently considering a move for Burnley's James Trafford in the January window. The other interest we have is in Sunderland's Anthony Patterson. Now, James Trafford obviously was bought for big money for Burnley from Manchester City, and really was seen as a very exciting young English goalkeeper. He's an excellent distributor of the ball. My issue with James Trafford is he's not the biggest. He reminds me a little bit in terms of size and stature of Hugo Lloris. He's not the biggest. He doesn't fill the goal. That is one thing you have to give Vicario credit for. He does fill the goal. And obviously, we know he's an amazing shot stopper, as was Hugo Lloris, an amazing shot stopper as well. But as Tottenham have been really pinpointed for our lack of ability defending set pieces, and we get the in-swinging corners put on our keeper a lot, to have James Trafford in there wouldn't fill me with a great deal of hope. But he is kind of a modern goalkeeper, really good with his feet, draws out the attackers, really well to start the kind of attacking move from the back. So I can see why they're looking at him. Also, he's had just a little bit of a down dip in his goalkeeping career. He's gone from a number one at Burnley when they got up into the Premier League, and he started to lose his place, didn't he, basically? And maybe that's why he might be available as a number two now. In terms of Anthony Patterson, I've got to be honest, I don't know a lot about him. But guys, if you've seen a lot of Anthony Patterson play for Sunderland, let me know. And let me know in the comments what you think about Anthony Patterson. He is a bit of a bigger guy, fills the goal a little bit more. But yeah, I think going for a younger, talented keeper who can probably grow with the squad and be happy to be a number two is the way forward. The reason I say that is because I just don't think we're going to spend the money that it would take to bring someone in who would be a genuine threat to Guillermo Vicario's position as number one. Moving on, Yang Min-hyuk, our South Korean signing who we bought in the summer but was due to come in January. He has confirmed that Spurs have asked him to join in December rather than January. His season in South Korea has finished. And he's currently recovering a little bit. But Yang Min-hyuk said this: there are a lot of injuries at Spurs. They asked me to come and recover there. I'm looking forward to working hard and establishing myself quickly. I mean, how good would that be, guys, if he came in and hit the ground running and gave us another option on both sides of the forward line? It would be great. He looks like a really pacey player, very brave on the ball, likes to take people on, and a good finisher. But as I've said a few times before, we do have to be patient with him. He's obviously only played in the South Korean League. And there will be a big uptick in the pace of the Premier League compared to that. And he will have to get used to that. He'll have to get used to training. And of course, there'll be a language barrier and stuff like that as well. I'm sure Sonny will take him under his wing and will help him out. Maybe even Sonny and his dad will have him to come and stay at their house. And his dad will take him to the David Lloyd Centre after training for extra training like he does a few times a week with Son Heung-min. But good thinking, I think, from Spurs to bring Yang Min-hyuk in a little bit early. Some quotes from Radu Dragusin. He said, we've been talking a lot about family, about staying together, sticking together in the tough times. We know we've had a couple of games that we've lost, but we talked between us and we said we have to stick together as a team to keep the same feeling between us and believe we can achieve something special. That was after the Manchester City game. I really do enjoy hearing the Spurs team and squad talk about the kind of family that they're trying to create there, fighting for each other, fighting for themselves, trying to achieve something. Jo has just come up in the comments talking about Yang Min-hyuk, saying, I hope he has good hamstrings. Well, actually, just before I go back onto the kind of family feeling of the squad at Spurs, that's actually a good point, Jay, about the hamstrings, because as we know, not only from his time at Spurs, where we've had a lot of muscle injuries since Ange Postecoglou's taken over, but also when he was at Celtic and some of his previous clubs in Japan and Australia, it's kind of known that his training regime, Ange Postecoglou, can lead to a number of muscle injuries. So Yang Min-hyuk will have to work hard on strengthening those muscles, and he's just a young boy as well. So yeah, I mean, joking aside, I hope he has good hamstrings too. Yeah, I like to hear that from Dragusin. I want Dragusin's confidence to keep growing. I want him to feel like a proper squad rotation member of the first team rather than someone who just comes in when Van der Ven or Romero aren't available. I think the more confident he can feel and the more rhythm he can get into his legs, the better he'll be. He's shown in those kind of backs to the wall games what a great box defender he is. We now need to get the confidence into him to allow him to play football better on the floor and to get more of those kind of in between the lines passes going into midfield. But I'm more confident certainly this week that we have a player there who could grow into the role as an Ange Postecoglou centre-half. Dejan Kulusevski actually went on to talk about the feeling of family that brings a squad together. He said it's the only way to win games is when you play for your family, when you see your guys in danger, when you help them defensively, and when you have the ball. We're a family, so no family is perfect, but at least we will protect each other. So this feels like messaging that is coming from Ange Postecoglou and seeping down into the Tottenham squad. And as we have a run, I think, of 8 games coming up between now and the end of December, we're going to need to all pull together. I don't know. Listen, it's been such an up and down season. It's hard not to be reactive, but I'm confident that 4-0 win against Manchester City can breed confidence into the squad and we can go on a little run. The only obvious doubt of that is, can Fraser Forster kind of roll back the years and do the job required to make the saves that Vicario has often had to make for us and save us in games? Some other news: Pape Matar's incredible strike against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup 4th round has been voted goal of the round. Who knew that there was a goal of the round in the Carabao Cup? I guess I didn't, probably because Spurs haven't won it. Maybe even ever, but certainly not in my memory. The Senegal midfielder pinged one home from 25 yards, if you don't remember, in that 2-1 victory, and he won 25% of the vote. I mean, that makes me really think. I saw a compilation this morning on X of all Pedro Porro's goals, and they're all absolute bangers. And for me, we don't get Pedro Porro into enough shooting positions outside the box, and it's the same with Pape Matar. He's clearly got a good kind of first-time stroke shot on him, especially when he tries to not hit it too hard with his laces, but more kind of get the side foot on it like he did against Man City. And we should be kind of rolling balls back for more shots just from the edge of the box. And I'd really like to see that happening going forward. I know that Ange's style of play is all about getting in the box as much as possible, but sometimes you've got to change it up as well. And especially in those games against teams who are playing 11 men behind the ball, got to change it up. You can't always go to the byline and hope that a cutback's going to work. Sometimes we're going to have to roll it to the edge of the box and have some shots from there, because they can take deflections, they can ping around and maybe fall for somebody else. And as we well know, breaking those deep blocks has been something that we've struggled with. Thanks to the brilliant Chris Cowlin for some of these stats I saw on his social media. Really interesting. Never before in the Premier League era have we scored more goals at this stage of the season than we have now. Since the formation of the Premier League in 1992-93, our 27 goals from our opening 12 games is our best return at this stage of a season, and it adds up to 2.25 goals per game. That's really high ratio, isn't it? Really good. We're currently top of the scorers in the Premier League, 3 ahead of league leaders Liverpool, who've scored 24. And only 4 times in the Premier League era have we scored 24 goals or more at this stage of a season. And on 50% of those times, 50% of those returns have come under Ange Postecoglou. The others, Harry Redknapp and Jose Mourinho, are the other 2 instances. Our best return in the competition before this term, as in terms of goals at this stage, was under Harry Redknapp back in 2011-2012, when we hit 26 goals in our opening 12 games. I have to say, I loved Harry Redknapp as manager of Spurs. I thought he was perfect. His messaging that came in was such a change from what the players had to deal with under Juan de Ramos, who they clearly had lost faith in. Famously, he stopped the mayonnaise being served at lunch, and he just came in, didn't he? And he said, just give it to Luka Modric. He bought back Defoe. He bought in Chorluka. He bought in his own players. But basically, he said, give it to Luka Modric, and he'll do the business. And of course, actually, it was Harry Redknapp who moved Gareth Bale forward from left back to left midfield. So looking back on those Harry Redknapp times was great. And I have to say, when we sacked him and brought in Andre Villas-Boas, I remember saying at the time, be careful what you wish for. And that's kind of exactly how it summed up. Our best goal scoring campaign to date in the Premier League of 2016-2017, we scored only 18. So basically the time where we scored the most in a whole season, we scored only 18 in our opening 12 games, but went on to hit 68 in our final 26 matches for 86 goals in total. That's when we finished on our highest ever league position of second, behind Antonio Conte's Chelsea, of course, with our highest ever points tally of 86. How did we not win the Premier League on 86? Absolutely devastating that we couldn't take the Premier League title that year. Okay, let's go back then to a story I brought you a couple of weeks ago. Hugo Lloris having his autobiography serialized in the newspapers. And of course, there was a lot of talk about the quotes he came out with about the watches that Daniel Levy gave the squad before the Champions League final that were engraved with Champions League finalists. Well, Hugo Lloris has kind of given more context to some of those quotes. He said this: there was a lot of noise about the Champions League episode. To be honest, there is nothing bad about that, especially because I have so much respect for the club and also for Daniel Levy. But at that time, it was a bit weird. The only thing I meant is the club never used to be in that position, and probably we didn't do things in the right way. It's as simple as that. Actually, I think just breaking into that, I think that's a really good point. One thing we forget is, of course, and I'm not sticking up for Daniel Levy here. I do think that engraving the watches with Champions League finalist is a bit stupid. But of course, he'd never had any level of success either. And that's probably why he deemed getting to the Champions League final as such a huge success. I mean, let's face it, after that semi-final, we all, danced around for 3 weeks. It was the best 3 weeks ever, wasn't it? And maybe actually a big mistake we made was not being like that, but we should have just been like, well, we're in the final, amazing, but now the hard work begins. I don't know. It's easy to say in hindsight, isn't it? Lloris goes on to say, I gave 12 years of my career to the club and I'm proud of it. And today I just support the club. I love the club and I just want to wish them and see them succeeding. I hope it will come, but I'm also proud because I was part of the group of players that make the club an evolution. When I signed for the club and when I left was a totally different club. Step by step, we've become even more competitive and put the club in a better position. I think today the club has everything and is strong enough to succeed. I mean, what I get from that is a little bit that maybe Lloris was a bit embarrassed by the reaction to that serialization and the quotes about the watches. And he's tried to kind of, settle it all down by saying, listen, it wasn't Daniel Levy's fault. I've got a lot of respect for the man. He just wasn't used to being in those positions either. And none of us really well, actually, Hugo Lloris probably was because he's a World Cup winner. But certainly none of us as fans of the club really were used to us ever getting to a Champions League final. I mean, that's just a fact. We'd never been to a European Cup final. We'd never been to a Champions League final. We were, just as the club were, I guess, on top of the world. And hopefully just they'll learn from that. And we can all learn from that just in case. And I think Ange Postecoglou is the man to take us back to the top. But if we get there again, hopefully we'll learn from that and we won't be ecstatic unless we actually bring the trophy home. Hugo Lloris also gave some quotes on Postecoglou's Spurs. He said, I spent 6 months in the changing room. I wasn't even involved, but I could enjoy the football vision of Ange. I still believe, and I'm still convinced, you have to stick with this way and trust the process. The team and club is in a good position. They have talented players, different ages, different experiences, but I still believe they can achieve something and win something. Part of the football world today, you have to deal with this expectation. And I just hope, and you don't want to see the team affected by these things or the club affected. They have to be strong and stay together and make one in the club. And also, I would say the fans need to trust the process because what we see, we enjoy. That is the football we want to see playing. And it's not because of one bad result or two bad results that we need to question everything. You have to look about medium to long term because I believe they can do it. Really interesting point. Let me know in the comments what you think about those and specifically what he's talking about in terms of the medium to long term, because we are very short termist, aren't we? And I can understand it. Of course I can. Especially actually if you're a bit of a younger Spurs fan who maybe has only been a Spurs fan for the last 10 years to 15 years. I can understand the frustration because during that period, we've always been pretty much kind of a top 6 side. So you're like, why can't we push on to be one of the best top 6 sides? Why can't we win the trophies? Why can't we do what all of those other top 6 sides have done in those years? If you look at Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, Man United, and Liverpool, the other 5, they've all won trophies in that period. So Tottenham, I guess, in terms of if you're a younger fan of the last 10, 15 years, we've always been bottom of that top 6. And I can see why that would be frustrating. But for those of us who've been fans since the 80s, actually, it's a little bit of a different flex because we remember what it was like in the 90s when it was so negative and so horrible and there were relegation scraps. And frankly, there is I'm afraid to say, there is a part of me that's like, feels fortunate that we've grown the club how we have and how we are now so kind of ready to push on to the next level. So I can see the kind of the difference in how those types of fans would feel. But as Hugo talks about, I think it is important at this stage, if we can remain patient, to still think about the medium to long term. Let Ange grow this group of players. Let the motivation and the desire lead these players to improve as one. I want to use an example from down the road, I'm afraid. Martin Ødegaard, when he was bought by Arsenal, he had been the great hope of Norwegian football, and he got his move to Real Madrid when I think he was 16. And then he kind of pinged about loan deals, and he never really showed his true talent until he went to Arsenal, and suddenly he was the right age. He grew with that Arsenal squad, and suddenly now you can see, I'm afraid to say, that he is one of the best players in the Premier League. And I think with players that we've brought in like Archie Gray, like Lucas Bergvall, they have to be allowed the time and the patience to grow so that when they really hit their straps as Tottenham players, as professional footballers, they're in the right place, and we can really benefit from that and improve as a result. Finally, I just wanted to bring up this little bit of news because it made me laugh. Noel Gallagher, obviously famous Manchester City fan, he was giving quotes about Spurs having just beaten Man City 4-0. He said, "They do it to us every time. They're the biggest frauds in the Football League. They'll get battered by Fulham at the weekend, no problem, but they always turn up for us. I wasn't expecting to win that game, but I certainly wasn't expecting to lose 4-0. It was a shocker." Well, Noel, chill out, mate. Cry harder, as Pumbo would say, as Richarlison would say. Listen, mate. Oh, such a nightmare to be a Man City fan, having cheated the system for the last 20 years. You just have to slag off Spurs. I enjoyed that. I especially enjoyed it because Noel Gallagher did the co-commentary on a TNT sports game a few weeks ago, and I was like, what is he doing there, doing that? And it was so embarrassing, and they lost that game anyway. So really good to see Noel Gallagher crying. Really enjoyed that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Please do press subscribe for daily Tottenham and transfer content. And you can listen to this on the Spotify and Apple podcast. Not the Spotify, I meant to say on the audio platforms, Spotify or Apple podcast. Just go over there, give me a follow or a subscribe. And if you want to get involved in these live daily shows on Big Up, go to bigup.com. And find the Spurred On community. Give us a join there, and you can get involved in the chat, or even if you want to be involved on a video call, we can do that as well. But try and enjoy the rest of your hump day. Of course, we got Roma tomorrow night. Hopefully, a glory night